It starts with a blur, metal meeting air in perfect rhythm, the kind of motion that turns fear into fascination. A machine built not just to move, but to dominate. One that transforms distance into heartbeat and silence into wind. You can almost hear the hum, feel the hum, even when it's standing still. It isn't about raw rebellion or reckless speed. It's about mastery, the quiet confidence that comes when precision meets purpose. Imagine a vehicle so refined it made time itself feel slower for everyone else on the road, yet faster for the one behind the bars. Its creation wasn't an accident, it was an answer, a declaration that engineering excellence could be elegant, that control could live where chaos once ruled. The legacy it left still lingers in every conversation about ultimate performance, and its legend rides on in every machine that dares to chase perfection. Like and subscribe if you love stories of speed and precision, and comment which icon of engineering we should explore next. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird didn't just arrive, it was born out of quiet rivalry and an unspoken challenge. In the early 1990s, the motorcycle world was obsessed with one number: top speed. Kawasaki had held the crown for years, and every other manufacturer seemed to circle it, unable to touch the title without breaking something else in the process: comfort, reliability, usability. Honda, famous for restraint and refinement, wasn't the brand anyone expected to chase the record. But the CBR1100XX was never meant to be reckless. It was designed to prove that the fastest motorcycle in the world could also be the most civilized. Inside Honda's R&D center, the project wasn't labeled a rebellion. It was a showcase of what could happen when engineering precision became a competitive weapon. The company's engineers dissected what made high-speed motorcycles both thrilling and terrifying. They realized the problem wasn't power, it was control. Power could be built in a lab. Stability had to be earned in motion. To create the CBR1100XX Super Blackbird, they didn't just turn up the horsepower. They reinvented how a motorcycle handled it. Everything started with airflow. Instead of chasing pure drag reduction, Honda's aerodynamicists sought balance, downforce at speed without instability and crosswinds. The result was a fairing that looked almost conservative, yet functioned like a scalpel at 150 miles per hour. The Blackbird's form wasn't aggressive. It was deliberate, its curves guiding air away from the rider and keeping the chassis planted. Beneath the fairing sat an 1137cc inline-4 engine, smooth enough to feel electric but fierce enough to push past 170 mph. It wasn't just the numbers that stunned riders. It was how easily those numbers arrived. There was no drama, no vibration, no mechanical shouting, just acceleration that built like a tide and refused to fade. For Honda, this was proof of concept, speed without sacrifice. Even the name carried intent. Super Blackbird wasn't marketing fluff. It was homage to the SR-71 spy plane, another machine that redefined velocity with grace. But where the aircraft needed a sky, the motorcycle owned the road. Honda engineers wanted that symbolism, a silent predator, sleek and composed, faster than the eye could follow. And unlike the muscle-bound sport bikes of its era, the CBR1100XX prioritized refinement over flash. Riders who owned one often said it felt more like a grand tourer disguised as a missile. The seating position was natural, the throttle response predictable, the suspension compliant enough for long rides yet rigid enough for sudden aggression. Honda knew its audience, seasoned riders who had nothing left to prove but everything to enjoy. The Super Blackbird wasn't for bragging, it was for mastering. The design team wrestled with a paradox: how to make the world's fastest production motorcycle also the easiest to ride. They experimented with engine mounts, frame stiffness, and even handlebar angles until every component felt in sync. The result was a motorcycle that rewarded subtlety. It didn't demand aggression. It invited precision. Push it, and it responded with composure. Ease off, and it settled into a hum, smooth, confident waiting. And that's what made the CBR1100XX stand apart. It wasn't a toy for thrill seekers. It was a statement for those who understood the beauty of balance. The ownership experience reflected that. Maintenance was straightforward, parts were built to last, and reliability was nearly legendary. Many Blackbirds ran tens of thousands of miles without complaint, a feat that even some touring bikes couldn't claim. It blurred the lines between categories: sport, touring, performance. For Honda, that blend wasn't accidental. It was strategic. The company didn't want to sell a bike that terrified buyers. They wanted to create one that expanded what high performance meant. The CBR1100XX wasn't about chasing adrenaline. It was about achieving equilibrium between extremes. It represented the peak of Honda's analog engineering era, just before electronics began to take over. Every decision, from the carbureted engine to the analog dash, was rooted in mechanical honesty. Riders could feel everything: the fuel pulsing, the gears engaging, the suspension breathing through corners. Yet even as it spoke to purists, it hinted at the future. A future where speed would come with restraint, not recklessness. In a sense, the Blackbird marked the end of innocence in the speed wars. It was the last time Honda pursued fastest in the world, without compromise or corporate caution. What followed would change the entire sport bike landscape forever. But before that transformation began, the CBR1100XX Super Blackbird stood alone, an apex predator that hunted in silence. And as it rolled into showrooms, it carried with it a quiet question that hung in the air. How long could perfection stay on top before the next contender arrived? That answer would define the next chapter of motorcycle history. When the Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird hit the market, it didn't just take a title, it reset the standard. The motorcycle world took notice almost immediately. Reviewers were stunned not just by its 178 mph top speed, but by how utterly composed it felt getting there. Competitors had built rockets before, but never one this smooth, this quiet, this deceptively polite. It was the kind of performance that felt less like a punch and more like a controlled detonation under glass. For Honda, the CBR1100XX became a demonstration of philosophy, mastery through refinement. Riders described it as almost clinical in its precision. There was no drama in the way it handled, no sharp edges or sudden surprises. At full throttle, it didn't roar, it surged. That's what separated it from its peers. It didn't demand courage to ride fast. It rewarded skill by making speed feel natural. This quality made it both beloved and misunderstood. Some enthusiasts felt it was too polite, lacking the raw aggression of a true sport bike. Others appreciated that very civility, seeing in it the maturity of a machine built for grown-up speed. On highways, the CBR1100XX glided like a jetliner, its weight lending it authority in crosswinds and its aerodynamics slicing the air in near silence. Owners discovered that even at lower speeds, the balance remained impeccable, steady in traffic, forgiving on bumpy backroads, patient when the world slowed down. This versatility helped it carve out a unique niche. It wasn't just a fast bike. It was a fast bike you could live with every day. Yet, with every triumph came the inevitable response from rivals. The speed wars had begun. Other manufacturers, unwilling to surrender, developed even faster, more aggressive machines. Each year, numbers crept higher, and with them, the stakes. The CBR1100XX had opened Pandora's box. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to be fast. You had to be the fastest. By the late 1990s, this obsession pushed technology and marketing to their limits. Aerodynamics became an arms race. Engines grew stronger, frames stiffer, electronics more intricate, and yet Honda didn't flinch. They had built the Blackbird to endure, not just to win. As newer contenders appeared, the CBR1100XX aged gracefully, still praised for its balance, still respected for its reliability. Where rivals chased records, it kept winning hearts. Tuning shops found new life in it too. The Blackbird's engine proved robust enough for major upgrades, turbo kits, custom mapping, and endurance builds that pushed it well past its already astonishing top speed. Some owners treated it like a platform, a foundation for personal expression. Others left it stock, trusting that Honda had already perfected the formula. In both cases, the machine earned a reputation as bulletproof. Even after a decade, it could compete with modern bikes in acceleration and composure, a testament to how far ahead Honda's engineers had been thinking. In the US, the CBR1100XX found a dedicated following among riders who valued comfort as much as speed. Its long-distance capability turned it into a cross-country favorite. With minor luggage modifications, it became a stealth touring bike, one that could outrun anything yet never sacrifice civility. Riders discovered they could cover hundreds of miles in a day without fatigue. The seating, the wind protection, the vibration control, all fine-tuned to make speed sustainable. This dual personality made it stand apart from pure sport bikes that demanded constant aggression. The Super Blackbird let riders breathe while still flying. But as the 2000s approached, a shift began. Governments and manufacturers grew concerned about the escalating race for speed. Rumors of new regulations and voluntary top-speed agreements surfaced. Suddenly, the kind of unrestrained performance that defined the CBR1100XX era faced an expiration date. The focus began to move toward control, electronics, and emissions. Honda, never one to defy the trend, quietly pivoted its attention. The Blackbird's production continued into the mid-2000s, but without major updates, it became a dignified elder among hyperbikes. Still, its influence endured. The smoothness that once seemed too tame now felt visionary. The balance between comfort and power became the new gold standard for high-performance touring machines. Competitors started mimicking its geometry, its throttle response, even its aerodynamic logic. What was once revolutionary became foundational. And that's where the CBR1100XX truly succeeded. It didn't just dominate its time, it defined what came after. Even today, ask any seasoned rider about the most well-balanced high-speed machine of its generation, and the answer arrives without hesitation. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird. Yet the story of its dominance was only half complete. The other half lay in what came next. The machines it inspired, the legacy it carried forward, and the quiet lessons it left behind about what speed really means when power meets purpose. The next phase of its story isn't about competition. It's about influence, the kind that lasts far longer than a speed record ever could. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird's legacy didn't fade, it evolved. After its initial reign as the fastest production motorcycle in the world, it became something more than a benchmark. It became a philosophy on two wheels. The CBR1100XX had proven that performance wasn't just about the numbers printed on a spec sheet. It was about how those numbers felt when translated through engineering finesse. As newer generations of superbikes emerged with electronic aids, traction control, and complex rider modes, the Blackbird stood as a monument to an era of mechanical purity. It was the last great Honda built entirely around human instinct, not computer intervention. In a world that began to automate control, the Blackbird trusted the rider to be the system. Every twist of the throttle, every lean through a high-speed curve, every gentle roll-off into a straight, these weren't filtered through algorithms. They were direct, analog, and deeply human. That's what made it timeless. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird embodied confidence without arrogance. Riders knew what it could do, and it never needed to shout. Decades later, enthusiasts still describe the sensation of its acceleration not as violent, but as inevitable. Like gravity had simply changed direction. That seamless surge became the signature that modern hyperbikes still chase, even with all their electronics. The Blackbird's influence can be traced in the aerodynamic contours and composure of later machines. Its lessons on balance between speed and stability, aggression and restraint, shaped how engineers approached every high-performance motorcycle that followed. In touring circles, it redefined expectations. Before the CBR1100XX, fast motorcycles were exhausting over long distances. After it, comfort became part of the performance equation. Riders discovered that power didn't have to punish. With minimal vibration, forgiving ergonomics, and a windscreen that actually worked, it became the blueprint for sport touring hybrids. In a sense, it democratized speed, not by making it cheap or easy, but by making it livable. The ownership culture that developed around the Blackbird was equally fascinating. These weren't riders chasing trophies or viral videos. They were people who saw the motorcycle as a companion for serious miles. Maintenance forums filled with stories of bikes crossing 100,000 miles with nothing but regular service. It became common to see well-kept CBR1100XXs still running flawlessly after decades, wearing their age like a badge of honor. That reliability wasn't luck. It was Honda's quiet obsession with over-engineering. Every bearing, every bolt, every cooling duct was built with margin. The bike was made not just to survive speed, but to thrive at it. That durability is part of why the CBR1100XX remains collectible today. It's a machine that rewards care with longevity, and unlike many hyperbikes that burn bright and fade fast, the Blackbird aged gracefully. Its design still looks understated, its mechanics still make sense. There's nothing dated about a motorcycle that was built to be timeless. For many, it represents the final chapter of Honda's golden age, the era when the company prioritized craftsmanship over gadgetry, when engineers had the freedom to pursue mechanical excellence without software to correct it. In that light, the CBR1100XX wasn't just a motorcycle. It was a philosophy cast in aluminum and steel. It symbolized what happens when precision becomes passion. Even its exit from the spotlight carried dignity. As emission standards tightened and newer designs took over, Honda didn't replace the Blackbird immediately. The company understood that you don't follow perfection with haste. When the era of electronically limited top speeds began, many enthusiasts saw it as the end of true high-velocity freedom. The CBR1100XX became a relic of a wilder, yet more disciplined time. A machine that could travel faster than most cars ever would, yet never felt dangerous in doing so. Its power came not from chaos, but from control. Today, collectors and riders alike look back on it with reverence. For some, it's a dream machine to restore. For others, a daily rider that still turns heads. Even among modern superbikes that boast more horsepower, the Blackbird holds a quiet authority. It's the motorcycle equivalent of a concert pianist, masterful, composed, capable of breathtaking moments but never needing spectacle. And in the US, where long highways stretch across open landscapes, the CBR1100XX still feels perfectly at home. It's not about speed limits or bragging rights anymore. It's about presence. The sense that beneath the fairing lies a masterpiece of engineering that will never truly age. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird wasn't just fast, it was flawless in intent. It proved that true performance is not about excess but about execution, that the highest form of power is mastery. And as its legend continues, it stands as a reminder that even in a world chasing progress, some designs reach a point where improvement simply means leaving them untouched. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird left behind a legacy that's as relevant today as it was the day it broke the speed record. For US riders, it remains a fascinating mix of rarity, practicality, and understated power. Finding one in good condition has become a small treasure hunt. Most examples are lovingly maintained, passed between enthusiasts who understand exactly what they're holding. Prices have held steady for clean models, often ranging between mid-range sport touring costs and collectible territory depending on mileage and originality. The best examples are unmodified, though even well-tuned versions tend to retain remarkable reliability, which was always the Blackbird's strongest suit. Its inline-4 engine, if serviced regularly, can last hundreds of thousands of miles. Parts availability remains solid, thanks to Honda's consistency and a global network of owners keeping the model alive. For those curious about ownership, it's still a surprisingly comfortable machine for long rides. Smooth at highway speeds, balanced in weight, and forgiving in everyday traffic. Fuel economy hovers in respectable ranges, and insurance rates often surprise riders by being lower than expected for a bike with such performance credentials. The maintenance curve is gentle, requiring nothing exotic. Honda designed it to be ridden, not babied. What truly sets the CBR1100XX apart in today's world is perspective. Modern sport bikes dazzle with electronics, launch control, and customizable traction systems. The Blackbird predates all of that, and that's precisely its charm. It offers direct connection between rider and machine. It's a reminder of how rewarding it can be to feel the mechanics working beneath you, to trust your skill instead of sensors. In a market now dominated by computers, the CBR1100XX feels refreshingly human. For riders seeking that blend of civility and sheer speed, it still stands as one of the finest all-around motorcycles ever built. It can commute, it can tour, and when you want, it can simply disappear into the horizon, smooth and silent as its namesake aircraft. The Honda CBR1100XX Super Blackbird story is ultimately about balance, the equilibrium between ambition and restraint, performance and practicality, art and science. It captured the best of what motorcycling could be. Fast, but not frantic. Powerful, but never reckless. Beautiful in both motion and stillness. For those who know, it isn't just another model from the past. It's a masterpiece that proved speed could have grace. And for everyone else, it's waiting, quietly, patiently, to be rediscovered. In a world obsessed with more, the Blackbird reminds us that sometimes the greatest achievement is simply getting it exactly right.